The Narcissist and Parental Alienation, Part 1. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. Regular viewers of my work know that I encompass so many aspects of the narcissistic dynamic, facets of the narcissist, the impact upon the victim, practical tips of how you deal with an ensnarement, and tell you so much about the narcissists that move in society. One area which perhaps causes the most hurt, the most damage, the most concern, relates to a dynamic where there is a narcissist, a non-narcissist, and one or more children involved. I am regularly consulted by individuals who are dealing with a situation where they are still in a relationship with someone who they have children with, who they suspect to be a narcissist, and they want to understand what they are dealing with and what they ought to do. I am also consulted regularly by people who have caused the relationship to end, but they're going through the divorce and they're dealing with child custody issues, looking to perhaps try and get total custody of their child or children and wanting my input and assistance. I provided many people with the benefit of my expertise to help them successfully achieve outcomes in court and to successfully manage the situation that's taking place with the narcissist when it comes to the issue of co-parenting. I've set out in my very useful assistance package how to co-parent with the narcissist, also in Child Defender and Divorcing the Narcissist, a vast amount of information and practical tips to help. Commonly, throughout those scenarios that I've mentioned, parental alienation rears its head. There are two instances essentially where this occurs. The narcissist engages in parental alienation by poisoning the mind of the child so that they don't want to spend time with the non-narcissist parent, or the narcissist accuses the non-narcissist parent of engaging in parental alienation and thus accuses that parent of poisoning the child against the narcissist. What is parental alienation? Well, it is the act of one parent seeking to turn the child or children against the child's other parent through manipulation, through criticism, through other negative behaviours without any reasonable justification. This includes denying the child access, criticising, encouraging disrespect, forcing the child to cut ties with the other parent. An indoctrinated and controlled child then feels fear, hatred and rejection towards the targeted parent and refuses contact with them. This type of behaviour is regarded as a form of child abuse. Children impacted by this psychological abuse are said to have parental alienation syndrome, PAS, which is a term that was coined by American psychiatrist Richard Gardner in 1985. It's important to recognise that it is a standard modus operandi of a narcissist to either seek to poison the children so that they have nothing to do with the non-narcissist parent, or where their behaviour has resulted in the child not wanting to have time with them, that their response is to suggest, the only reason why my child could not want to be spending time with me is because you, the other parent, must have poisoned them against me, and it's a false accusation. Narcissists regularly engage in the commission of parental alienation or the false accusation of it. There are, of course, instances where it is appropriate to eradicate or diminish the child's relationship with one parent with legitimate justification, where there are reasonable grounds. For instance, where that child is subjected to domestic violence, physical, emotional, or sexual abuse, neglect, mental disorders, or substance abuse, and therefore estrangement takes place, whereby the child, or a combination of the actions of the non-narcissist parent and the child, result in estrangement from the narcissist parent. I've explained elsewhere that not all relationships break down because of narcissists, but many do. And it therefore follows that when a relationship breaks down, i.e. a formal marriage, or where there's children involved, then that invariably ends up going into the court process. This means that lots of narcissists then go into the court process. And time again, I have seen practitioners within the court process, lawyers, advisors, psychologists, court officials, judges, fail to recognize the behavior of a narcissist. Accordingly, bad decisions can occur. I, of course, have also advised many people about what they do with the evidence to ensure that they get a better outcome. And in this series, I'm going to be examining the situation of parental alienation, both in terms of where the narcissist engages in it, or when the narcissist accuses you of doing it. Because narcissists end up in the family court system, it means that there are going to be repeated threats to that narcissist's sense of control. Court practitioners fail to realise this and label them as high conflict. Whilst indeed they are high conflict, the reason that they are high conflict is because a narcissist has been channeled into the system. Unfortunately, many of these practitioners believe that a collaborative approach is appropriate, that the two parties should, in effect, behave like adults, put the children's interests first, and behave appropriately. Anybody who has been involved with a narcissist and has studied my work knows that that simple outcome is not something that can be achieved because of the narcissist's inherent need for control, fuel. That the narcissist invariably themselves doesn't realise that they need that, and of course other people do not, sometimes including the actual victim of the machinations of that particular narcissist. This leads to disruptive and very difficult and distressing situations for people. The narcissist engages in this behaviour because it's linked to the pursuit of the prime aims. When the relationship has ended, let us say, for instance, the non-narcissist has instigated divorce proceedings and has left the narcissist, that causes massive wounding. One way of asserting control over the non-conforming former intimate partner primary source is to use the children as tools against that individual. And thereby, by triangulating the children with the former spouse, the children are perhaps treated especially well. They're allowed to do whatever they want. They're given treats. They're allowed to stay up late. They're taken to places. Money is thrown at them, so they naturally start to prefer that particular parent, even though the parenting might not be in their best interests. The other parent, trying to be the disciplinarian, is portrayed as boring, harsh, unfair, cruel. And the narcissist, of course, having no sense of fairness or emotional empathy, plays upon this, saying, I'm your favourite parent, aren't I? Cultivating an image of them being the one where the children would be happiest. In other instances, it can involve what I've just described alongside smearing, telling the children that the other parent is no good, that the other parent criticises them, that the other parent doesn't love them, that the other parent is harsh, that the other parent has been telling lies about them, that the other parent is trying to control them. And thus, the narcissist, in order to assert control over the children, and also to nullify the threat posed to the control by the former intimate partner primary source, smears again and again and again. This smearing affords direct control over the children and an indirect assertion of control over the former spouse, and ultimately results in the poisoning of the children against the former spouse, hence why the narcissist does it. Very few narcissists will sit there and think, I'm now going to embark on a specific and tailor-made campaign to poison my children against the former spouse. It actually happens as an ad hoc approach, whereby each time The former spouse is deemed to be perceived as threatening the narcissist's control. Sometimes the narcissist will assert control directly over that former spouse with a hoover. But in other instances, it can be done, particularly where they're not physically proximate, by saying something to the children, thus asserting control directly over them, which smears the absent former intimate partner primary source, so that gives that indirect sense of control to the narcissist. And each time the former intimate partner primary source comes up on the radar of the narcissist, and they assert control in this way, a smearing takes place. So there is a cumulative effect, which over time can cause the children to not want to return to the former intimate partner primary source, to go along with the allegations that have been made by the narcissist, thus leading to alienation. In other instances, the very behaviour of the narcissist, particularly where lesser or mid-range, has resulted in complications for them. They have been abusive towards the child. They've neglected the child. They've taken drugs in the presence of the child. There's been a string of intimate partners going through the house, various uncles or aunties, which disrupts the child. The child doesn't turn up for school on time. The child isn't sleeping properly. And therefore, the sense of entitlement of the narcissist, the absence of emotional empathy, and the parental abrogation of responsibilities and duties results in evidence being accumulated, which means that the child doesn't want to spend time with the narcissist parent, and it may well be that the non-narcissist parent takes steps at court to reduce contact, reduce access, and in some instances get rid of it altogether. In those circumstances where the non-narcissist parent acts in the best interests of their child or children, that, of course, is a massive threat to the control of the narcissist. The narcissist will never say, yes, I'm usually off my face and drinking drugs with a parade of unsuitable women coming round. The children never get a bath, they're not fed properly, and they're just left in front of the television. It's no wonder they've been taken away from me. Because the narcissism will not allow the narcissist that level of self-reflection. It will not allow the narcissist to sit and think to themselves, I've actually brought this on myself, haven't I? Instead, as part of the delusion and the self-defense mechanism, what the narcissism does is jump to the paranoid conclusion, the non-narcissist parent, or rather the other parent, has clearly poisoned the children against me by making up lies about me, fed them with nonsense, encouraged them to lie about me, and in the circumstance, falsely accuses the non-narcissist parent of engaging in parental alienation, when in actual fact what they've done is bring about the estrangement of the child from the parent based upon the narcissist parent's own behaviours and shortcomings. But remember, the narcissist is incapable of seeing that. You might be moved to want to try and explain that to the narcissist. I haven't poisoned them against you, you will say. It's happened because the children are sick and tired of you never giving them any attention, never feeding them properly. The fact that you're always snorting cocaine and drinking Jack Daniels when you have them, that you're erratic as to when you're collecting them. It's your own behaviour. That doesn't wash with the narcissist, because the narcissist's narcissism has to reject the suggestion that they're at fault. And thus again and again and again, even though you are trying to get the narcissist to understand that they have caused the problem for themselves, and it's their behaviour that has made the children feel this way, you may as well go and bang your head against a proverbial brick wall. It won't work. Instead, what you find is that the narcissist turns around and says, you bitch, you bastard, you've turned the children against me. You've made up lies about me to child protection services or social services. You've said I've taken drink and drugs. You're the one that's taking drink and drugs. Projection. You're suggesting that I've been engaging in inappropriate behaviours. I haven't. You have. And you find yourself being accused of the very things that the narcissist is doing. And thus, there are two limbs to this. Situations where the narcissist causes the child to not want to have anything to do with you, and instances where the narcissist is in effect lost out, then in that instance, you are accused of engaging in parental alienation and accused falsely. The whole concept of parental alienation disorder is heavily debated. But the fact is that the alienating behaviour does exist. Alienating parents engage in behaviours such as general bad-mouthing, making the target parent, the non-narcissist, appear dangerous or sick. Talking about the child custody case or child support issues with the child, oversharing, lack of boundary recognition, absence of emotional empathy. Accusing the targeted parent of not loving the child. Defaming the targeted parent in front of the authorities. Restricting visitation or withholding contact information. Sharing parental conflict and marriage issues with the child. Making negative remarks about the targeted parent's extended or new family. Intercepting calls and messages from the targeted parent. Hiding the child or moving away. This then results in not only the child suffering further abuse, but then they are likely to be alienated from the innocent parent. Dealing with this is a complex and difficult situation, but it is one that is readily addressable. So much of the material fails time and time again when dealing with parental alienation to recognise that a narcissist is involved. The narcissist is involved because they show their sense of entitlement to behave that way, a lack of accountability towards the former spouse, former boyfriend, girlfriend, the other parent, shows a lack of accountability for the behaviours towards the child or children and to the relevant authorities. Shows grandiosity in believing they can behave in this manner. It shows the paranoia of the accusations that are made. It shows the various manipulations that are engaged in. And it is important, hugely important, to understand the mindset of that alienating parent, to know that they are a narcissist and what that means. It then enables you, as the other parent, not to go on fool's errands, not to make mistakes, to ensure that you present your evidence in the appropriate way, to help you look after your children. It is fundamental for you to understand that you're dealing with a narcissist, and then what that actually means in terms of behaviours and what you can achieve. In this series, I'm going to be addressing an actual case study involving parental alienation, how it failed to identify that a narcissist was involved, and explaining and dissecting it all to aid your understanding so that you can better protect yourself and your children. This is crucial work, and I would ask you to ensure that you share this series in groups that you might belong to that deal with this topic, so that people start to understand it revolves around narcissists and what that means. Just by searching about parental alienation, I see that narcissism is not mentioned. That is a massive error. This type of work, of course, doesn't ever have the prominence of talking about Harry's wife, but it is far more important. And it is through those of you that are listening to me now that it is incumbent upon you to share this far and wide, to direct other people to the work, to share it in those groups, to post it below the line in discussions, to add it to comments, to ensure that this work gets the exposure that it deserves, both in terms of the quality of the information that I provide and enabling it to get to the people that need it most. You're receiving this information for free. Therefore, I ask you, as part of the dynamic between you and I, that as I steer you through all of this information, that you respond by ensuring that it's shared, liked, and disseminated far and wide. Thank you in advance for your cooperation and support in that regard. I'm H.G. Tudor. We'll move on in part 2 to commencing the examination of the case study, what that means, and looking at the mistakes that are made.